Now on Radio 4, a new series where Fee Glover and her guests sit around the kitchen table and talk frankly about something they all have in common. In this first programme, addiction and what it's like to fall off the wagon in a new series of shared experience.
I'd had quite a period of time of having come off the drugs, and so coming off heroin, coming off crack, coming off alcohol, being totally abstinent from everything, and being very clean to the point where I wasn't drinking coffee and I wasn't having sugar, and I was living this really, really pure life. And I met up with some friends who knew that I was in recovery, knew I didn't drink. It was a weekend, it was a Friday night. Friday nights always do something funny for me because I think the whole world is celebrating apart from me. And I met up with some friends and I remember thinking, I'll just slip a vodka into this lime and soda because they knew I only drank lime and soda. And my intention was to, because I wouldn't tell them that I'd control it, that I'd be okay, that I'd just have a couple of drinks and I'd just be, you know, partying, and I'll just be a little bit more laid back and I won't feel so tense. And the moment that alcohol hit my system, it was like a party went off inside me. It's like everything was like, right. It's like I slammed the table and went, woohoo! That's exactly how I felt. And I just couldn't stop. And of course, the first few drinks were amazing because it released me from probably some pain or angst. And then by the Monday morning when I couldn't stop and I was sniffing loads of stuff and my friend wouldn't go to work, she was worried about me, suddenly that reality of like, oh my God, what have I done? I really am out of control. I really can't control this thing.
Yeah, my name's Richard. I am addicted to gambling, and I can still remember my first lapse quite clearly. I worked as a taxi driver, and I used to go in lots of pubs and clubs, pick people up. And I picked up a person at a workman's club, so there's a big jackpot machine, and he was playing it. And he said to me, do you want to have a go together? No one's going to know, I thought, except me. So I said, yeah, all right. So we put £1 each in and hit the jackpot, literally £1 each. And suddenly I had all this money and didn't know what to do with it. Usually it'd be a big happy thing, but it was awful. And it was just so easy. It was just so easy. The temptation was there, the opportunity was there, and I had money in my pocket, and that was it. It was so easy.
But you say it was awful, so the awful thing is the realisation that you hadn't stopped gambling.
It was the fact, it was how easy it was to just stick the coin in, and the consequences, I realised those straight away. Before that, if I sort of promised I wasn't going to gamble again, whatever, it didn't really count if I did gamble because the consequences were different. This time, because I knew I had a problem, it just changed the whole dynamics of it for me. And unfortunately, that wasn't the first relapse. It was only like one instance, but then I'd go 6 months and then it happened again for different reasons, whatever excuse I used.
Is there something that's more devastating about falling off the wagon than actually the slide and the realisation that addiction is taking over your life? I mean, is it because, you've built the beautiful sandcastle on the beach and you're the one that is kicking it down? I think for me, my first relapse was incredibly painful because I had all this awareness of what was going on. So rather than just using drugs and drinking and in fear and in terror, but not having that added awareness of what was going on for me. Whereas when I first picked up alcohol, it was like the volume was intensified and everything was doubled, extreme. So I was having to drink and use more. What about your experiences, Simon? Are they very similar?
Looking back, I knew that I had a problem with alcohol. It created chaos around me and things, and I knew that once I started drinking, then I couldn't guarantee whether I'd have one drink or I'd just go on for days, or I didn't know what was going to happen. So I did abstain from alcohol, but I did it by using drugs. And therefore I could deny that I had either an alcohol problem or a drug problem because I could simply switch between the two. But I abstained from alcohol for quite a long time, and that was okay. But I had been using amphetamine and things. I'd got into that sort of side of things, and it caused problems with my mouth. I had a very sore mouth. And my crazy thinking at that time, because my thinking was really crazy, although to me it sounded absolutely rational, I decided, well, I need some mouthwash. I've got a sore mouth. I couldn't find any mouthwash in the house, but what I did find was a bottle of vodka. Well, alcohol, that's antiseptic. That makes perfect sense to me. So I had a mouthful of vodka, cleaned out my mouth, and that night I finished the bottle of vodka. Totally out of control thing going on. And that's where all the lying and the deceiving and the cheating, when Richard said, how do you explain all this money and things? Yeah, how do you explain the empty bottles, And, I'm almost playing mythical people for it. It must be the neighbours putting them there, I mean, not me. Of course it's not me. Who else could it be?
I was going to ask exactly that question. What does you falling off the wagon do to people around you? Because presumably part of your recovery has been being honest with people about your addiction and taking something from them, which is their support and their acceptance.
My wife's been with me since day one in my recovery. And so, take that first instance of where I gambled. I went home and I was honest and said. And it wasn't till a couple of years later that she said that first time really hurt her. But she said, the following Tuesday, you went to your meeting. And I kept going, even though I struggled. I kept going to the meetings. And she said that's why she stuck with me, was just because I kept going to the meetings. She felt that if I kept going, the things would get there. And they did, just took longer than what we thought. And so between going the first time in 96 and stopping in 99, I had about 6 or 7 times where I went and gambled again. And each time I had to sort of go home. And it wasn't face the music now, it was be honest and say, I'm so sorry, and I used excuses of I'd had a few drinks, I was with my friends and whatever. But that's what it was excuses. In reality, I know that I just wanted to have another bet. I
was just going to ask Richard, I remember when I was asked, why have you had a drink? And I would have to invent a reason, because I knew simply saying it seemed like a good idea at the time wasn't going to wash. And I would invent an imaginary sort of stressful thing or something that might justify me having a drink at 11 o'clock in the morning. And if you asked me if I was truly honest at that point, which was something I was pretty incapable of being, if you asked me, I didn't know. I had no idea what had happened that had made me pick up that first drink. And I wondered, was it like that? Is it like that for you with the gambling? Do you know why it is, or does it just happen?
I know why it is, because I wanted to.
Yeah.
But that's only in hindsight, when I moved away from it for some time, that I could look back and say, I just wanted to do it. Yeah. And you talk about the buzz, yeah, getting the winner, Unfortunately, I didn't get very many, so I was a rubbish gambler anyway.
I was a rubbish drinker.
And people get that buzz from just placing a bet. It doesn't matter what it does. It doesn't matter if it win or lose. It's just about being able to do it. I know you shared, Lisa, about the physical effect of drink on you. I don't think gambling quite does that. There isn't very rarely a physical downside, whereas with drinks and drugs there can be. But the mental sort of thing is quite intense, I think.
I identify with the mental. Yeah. For me, I think I understand now that I was trying to change the way I felt. That I kind of have this model in my head that I'm an incredibly sensitive person and that emotions really don't sit well with me, or didn't sit well with me. They really seem to hurt and things. And certain behaviours I discovered when I was younger, particularly around sex and things, or drinking and drugging, desensitised me. It just made me feel kind of more normal. But the problem was I couldn't just have one or two. In a sense, I wouldn't have a problem if I knew I could have just one drink or 2 drinks, or I could just have one joint, say, or something. But I just can't do those things. Once I start, I don't seem to be able to stop. And that's where the chaos starts. That's where the lies start.
Quite interesting what Richard was saying about the fact that it wasn't the amount you were gambling, because I've had it before when my relapse came in the form of painkillers, strong painkillers, and it just did something to my head which altered my thinking, and whether or not it was because of what I've learned, and in 12 steps recovery you do get taught, right, you suffer from a disease. So I couldn't work out, and I was quite young at the time, and I couldn't work out whether or not it was that it was altering my thinking, or whether or not it was the fact that, like you were saying with the gambling, that it just completely knocked you off your...
Absolutely.
But you said this thing about falling off the wagon, that it was like the party had started, when the alcohol hit your bloodstream, it was like, well, hey, off we go. I mean, as a youngster, as a teenager, it's why everybody goes out on the lash, because you want the party to start, physically and metaphorically, that's what you're chasing. So when did you realise, when you were out and about with your friends, when you were very young, that you were the person who couldn't stop?
I knew very early, very, very early. When I was 13 years old and I was at boarding school, I drank a bottle of vodka to blackout, ended up in hospital. And I remember thinking back then, how come I didn't have that moment when I thought enough was enough? And yet, even from those warning signs from when I was really, really young, I still tried to, well, maybe I'll try Cinzano. Maybe that'll be different. Or maybe I'll try Blue Nun.
Good Lord, woman.
I know, exactly. That was desperate measures.
Didn't someone say something?
Yeah, no. It was the cheapest thing, I think, at that
But did
point.
your friends worry about you then? Or did you keep it a bit secret that you knew that you had something going on that they didn't have?
I chose friends that would drink like I did, and that liked to go into the field and drink scrumpy cider and get completely bladdered.
Yeah.
They make it okay if you're surrounded with other people that are partying like you or using drugs like you. It normalised my behaviour. The more I surrounded myself with really hedonistic, and I would compare myself to them, and I think, well, I'm not quite as bad as this person because this person's doing that. So there was always a point of reference until things progressed to the point where I was probably the worst out of the bunch.
You started really young then, didn't you? And did that, did you mess up your teenage years? Did you get thrown out of school? Did you make it to university? What happened with those two things going on?
Miraculously, I made it through school. I had moments in between school and university when I ended up back in Hong Kong having to try and work, but everything was chaotic and messy. I did end up by being back at university, and for the first year I tried not to do anything, smoked a bit of weed, picked up a bottle of K cider in the second year, and that was it. I don't even remember my final year of university, but I did get my degree. Somehow.
And what happened after university?
I was in rehab about a year after university, because by then I was using heroin and crack and trying to go to London to try and find work and ending up in King's Cross scoring. So it was all a bit messy, really. But yeah, huge regrets in terms of, what you sabotage and the loss that you have from... Because I was always quite ambitious and had really great goals that I wanted to achieve in life.
Dreams. We all had dreams. And I was going to win mine.
Yeah.
Were your dreams unrealistic? Is that sometimes part of the problem?
I think so. Sort of, a nice car, buy a house, never ever happened. Never ever. Even since stopping, it didn't happen. Those were the sort of dreams I had, being happy, and I wasn't happy. It's interesting the point about being socialising, with people that you surround yourself with people that drank. So with me, with gambling, I was isolated. I didn't want people knowing how much I was putting in the machine, how much I was spending in the casino, how long I was in the bookies, which is quite common. And we think we're really, really clever and no one knows what we're doing all the time. In actual fact, they got a pretty good idea. But it is quite isolating when you get addicted to it, because the escalation of time spent, money spent and so on, you don't want nobody to know, hiding bank statements and stuff like that, is one knows what we're doing all the time. In actual fact, they got a pretty good idea. But it is quite isolating when you get addicted to it, because the escalation of time spent, money spent and so on, you don't want nobody to know, hiding bank statements and stuff like that, is, not a good place to be. Here's the time, the effort, the lies, the deceit, the cheating, the crime to subsidise what, either replace what I gambled away or to give me more money to gamble. All that it wasn't about the money. It was just about being able to do it. And, there comes a point when you're sort of scrubbing around in the car, you've got another 40p, at least I can get another bet on.
You mentioned crime. Mm-hmm. I feel compelled to ask what type of crime and were you caught?
I changed a lot of jobs just before I got caught, usually selling off stuff where I worked, the trade I worked in at the time, or you'd sell something cheap, like anything. If you wanted some money to get a drink, have a bet, ridiculous, very good things going for next to nothing.
Is there a similar kind of devious nature that both of you would?
Oh, absolutely.
Yes, identify.
Absolutely. I allegedly, he says in inverted commas, run my own business. And I say allegedly because, I suppose I was quite a reasonable photographer. If it weren't for other things, I might have been reasonably successful. One of my ideas of things are okay is I'm paying for this. It's actually coming out of the money I'm earning. But regrettably, all the money I was earning went on paying for drugs and drink and things. I actually accomplished the amazing thing of stealing off myself. All the money that came in, I wanted as cash or to be converted into cash as quickly as possible, whilst everything that I needed for the business was bought on credit cards. And even at a very simple level, I outwardly was very kind to my partner. I said, I'll go and do all the shopping. Well, the reason I wanted to do all the shopping was that I could go to Sainsbury's or wherever, get a loaf of bread and a bottle of Irish whiskey. And it would just show on the credit card as Sainsbury's. So when we talk about dishonesty, it's not kind of always sort of that classic, the idea that, people have that it's mugging old ladies in the street and things. It's not necessarily that. It's kind of, it's usually cheating the most on the people that you love the most because they're the ones who give you the most leeway to do it.
And have you had a long-term partner through
yes, through the whole
thing?
Addiction.
How have you tried to come clean with them about the fact that they have loved someone who has lied to them so much? I mean, that's quite a big thing for them to do, but it's also quite a big thing for you two to have to do.
I remember not so long ago, there was a group of us, most of us were in recovery, but there was one or two partners there as well. And those of us in recovery, I was regaling a story from the past and sort of laughing at the fact that I was talking to the kettle and some quite crazy stuff that was going on. My partner actually got quite angry about that. It's the first time that I'd ever known him be angry about my addiction. And I didn't realise at the point that I was doing that, talking to the kettle and stalking around the house at the late hours, searching cupboards and doing all sorts of weird things, that he was thinking that he's going mad, and actually thinking of his own physical safety, because what I thought was rational, he was clearly seeing as being highly irrational. And how did he know that, I might not take it in? And he got this image of Joe Orton, who was killed by his partner, who was having psychosis.
Not a good image, no.
I didn't know any of that. It was years after I got into my recovery that I realised how much I terrified my partner in that period of how I was ill.
Lisa, what about you? Have you had
No, I haven't had a long-term partner. I don't think they would have put up with my behaviour.
But you ask a lot of other people around you, don't you, who love you,
Yes.
presumably to witness
Family.
and to witness the change when you admit your addiction, face up to it, and start working on it. I mean, that must be something that has an impact on them too.
Hugely, and if you're talking about relapse, I remember the time when I told my dad that I was a heroin addict, and I remember being on a walk with him, and to a certain degree he felt relief because he thought that I was suffering from a mental breakdown. He didn't really know what was going on, and they've been hugely supportive, but the last couple of times of relapse, he actually turned around to me and he said to me, how can I stand in front of a fast-running train? I've had to just separate myself. So it destroys trust that may take years and years, and amends which need to be made back to these people, because these are people who build up hope and watch you build your life back up and watch you come alive again and watch you mend all your relationships again. And then suddenly out of nowhere, through no reasonable explanation, is that suddenly you're off key again and you're doing all the destructive things to your life.
Have you ever done the crime thing?
Yes, I have.
What have you done?
I actually was in prison for 18 months.
Were you?
Yes.
What for?
For theft and fraud. And I can say that now because I have actively made amends for some of that. And it's, it's very shameful for made amends for some of that. And it's, it's very shameful for me because I went in later years and it came on the back end of a relapse and really I, on the one hand, ending up there stopped me from my using had become very, very destructive. And so for a lot of people that were in my life at the time, they said, well, thank God you ended up there. We thought we were going to visit your graveside. But then on the other hand, it was at that moment that I was able to wake up to the reality of like, oh my goodness, what has become of me.
Can I ask you all about trigger points then? I mean, is something like this one of them, where you are asked lots and lots of questions about something that actually, I don't know, maybe you just like to not talk about, not be defined by, not have as a big badge on you?
Not for me. My experience of not knowing that there is a life after drugs and drink and addiction as a whole has made me want to sort of say, scream out, you know what, I've had this problem and there is something you can do about it. I know you won't want to do anything about it until you're ready, but please know that when you are ready, then there's something you can do. And I guess also to, the loved ones of people who are involved in this, that it's not necessarily the end of the world. If you do defeat the denial that you've got a problem and you want to change, then the possibility exists to do exactly that and to go on and have a really brilliant life. One thing that held me back from recovery was thinking, what am I going to do without my medicine? What am I going to do without this substance that I kind of mistakenly thought made my life better or even tolerable?
Lisa, what about you? Are there lots of days when you'd just rather really, really, really rather not talk about it?
I think I try and focus on what I want and how to have fun and how to do things that the wild part of me can go and sort of let my hair down, and I might be wanting to plan a skydive or something like that.
Talking about trigger points, now, I don't think I could sort of stress how much I would have to push myself to physically go and have a bet. You know, to walk into a bookies or to go to a casino, you've got to sign in or something now, and I have a computer at home. I've never gambled online. I was lucky. I got out when computers were still relatively new, 96. You couldn't gamble online then, I don't think so. So I got out, I felt really lucky. I got out when I did. I don't think, certainly as far as gambling goes, I have a trigger point at the moment. I don't feel the need.
Do you spend a lot of time or any time at all thinking about what might happen if you fell off the wagon again?
No, I try not to, because I know what happens. I've had enough experiences to know, and I can't imagine it getting darker and more under the floorboards than it has been. But going back to triggers, one of the things which just sprang to mind as you were talking is sometimes it's not about the dark days or when things aren't necessarily going to plan, because I work harder on myself, or I'll go out and help somebody, or I'll actively try and work on that. Sometimes a trigger for me is when the sun is out, I'm elated, I'm really buzzing with life, and I get this feeling like I'm indestructible, and I'm walking down Brighton Pier or whatever, where everybody's sat down and the condensation or on a beer glass, and it suddenly winks at me, and that can be more of a trigger than when things are tough. So your thoughts for the future then are positive ones? Can there ever be a certainty about being positive? Is that possible?
I only know that for today, I've chosen not to have a drink or a drug. What will happen tomorrow? I hope I won't have a drink or a drug, but I don't know. But I know it's possible because I've kind of done it. I can't tell you what's going to happen tomorrow because I've learned I live in today now.
Yeah. Positive?
Absolutely. I make plans now. The last 2 years, my wife and I have been to America and Canada and done some amazing things. And, we're both on low incomes, but because we're diligent with money and so on, it's possible. And we're already sort of working on our next trip in maybe 3 years' time, because it's one of the things, we did it and we loved it and we want to do it again. But there's so many other things in our life they've always been there. We just didn't see how valuable they were. So I'm really optimistic. I'm making plans. I could gamble tomorrow, absolutely, or today even, but...
Oh no, please don't.
No.
Do you know what? I'd feel bad.
No. I could,
really bad.
But I choose not to.
Yes, no, for sure.
Life's too good. Yeah.
Lisa?
Yes, positive. I felt as though I was tied to my past, and I only had a past. And I do feel as though I do have the hope of a future. It's probably been the first time that I've truly been able to say that.
Shared Experience was presented by Fee Glover and produced by Maggie Eyre. You can email the programme at shared.experience@bbc.co.uk. And for details of organisations which offer advice and support, go online to bbc.co.uk/actionline or call the Radio 4 Action Line to hear recorded information on 0800 044 044. Lines are open 24 hours and are free from most landlines. Some networks and mobile operators will charge for these calls.